talk a little bit about the first scenario. The first scenario, we're actually going to identify space. So how do we look at space creatively and make sure that we identify it and then designate it in the right way, or define it in the right way? So what I have here is a school, in this case, an elementary K-6 school that I'm going to filter down to in a second. That school has several spaces that are designed specifically for it, and in this case you can see that it has 477 individual students that are coming every day to school. One way of really understand the space a little better is to apply a room name, and we actually added the room name into one of the labels, and you can see here that the school itself is broken down to classrooms all the way from kindergarten to 6th grade. Now, I would just say that there is quite a lot of challenge here in terms of really breaking down the occupancy and the capacity of individual rooms, just because, let me stop it right here, just because those individual classrooms, as you guys well know, require different social distancing guidelines. So clearly the room that is available or should be available to a kindergarten classroom is completely different than the space that is available for, let's say, 6th grade. And that's just because of the way that individual or students in this case interact with space, move in space, and require social distancing. And I will just say that the whole term social distancing is not a new term. We think that I mean, at least for me, as I was researching this whole thing, because back to school for me, 6 months ago, or back to school, back to work in general, was relatively new, because we have not dealt with pandemic in the same way that we are dealing with them right now. But in a way, social distancing for people that are in fact designing space was not something that is out of the ordinary, just because students require specific space in order to do work at in the best way. So, of course, first today, before the whole idea of social distancing is taking completely different meaning, and what we're meaning is actually how to keep individuals safe. Before that, it was just how to keep individual learning, in their optimal condition. But regardless, in order to reduce capacity, we can actually look at the individual space. And Archibus allows us, and you can see it right here, to actually set a target for the whole floor and say, let's say for this specific floor, I'm going to reduce the occupancy target by a certain percentage. So in this case, I'm going to drop it by 40%, just because the 113 over there is just the square area that is assigned for a safe 6-foot radius for individual person. So if I actually take the 477 individual capacity that I have in that individual building divided by 113, what I'll get is about 190 students, which is a huge reduction, in this case 40% reduction exactly, from what I had before. That also leaves me to about 260 students that are completely in the air. So what Archibus will allow me to do here is to set that occupancy reduction by floor. And once I do that, I can see the exact number, right? So you can see that right now I have 191 students and still 286 students that needs to be accommodated somehow. Now, as that happens, I actually need to look at the individual space and think about that space in terms of how do I reduce capacity to those individual rooms? Because originally the individual classrooms were already designed for capacity of normal capacity. In this case, it's about 25 students in an individual room. But of course, those capacities going to be reduced about 40%, or to an occupancy of 40%, reduction of 60, which is quite a bit. So you can see here that as I go to those individuals classrooms, I can actually, and I'll do it in a second, I can actually reassign capacity. I can do it in bulk, right, like I'm going to do in a second, but I can also do it individually for every classroom. Now, what I'm showing right now is other areas and functionalities that we have in school that are not necessarily classrooms, but can be used, in case we need it as classroom as well. So we talked about it before, and we said we had about 280 something additional students that still need accommodation. And we have a lot of area in a classroom that can accommodate those. And so Archibus can actually look at all the additional space like cafeteria, gyms, resource labs, computer labs, speech labs, and other. In this case, about 13,500 square feet of additional space that can be then appropriated for learning. But even that will only bring us to about 310 students in classrooms, and still 167 short. So we still have to somehow create a hybrid program where a lot of students, in fact, are going to will learn from home regardless, just because of lack of space, no matter what. So how do I look at my individual space? And that's what we're going to do right now. So first of all, we're actually going to look at those individual classrooms that we always knew are good for, learning. And we're going to click on those individually and then change the capacity of those classrooms from what they used to be to, what we know now they're going to be. So basically 40% occupancy. So from 25, we can, with one click of a button, reduce them very quickly to, 40% reduction, which is about 10. Right, and save that and make sure. Now, what we do know right now that if we allocate individuals, the system will tell us it's overcapacity after we'll reach to 10 students in those individual classrooms. Now, in the same way, we can actually take the other spaces and now give them capacity, because right now the capacity of those spaces is 0, right? Because they are not designed as individual classrooms. And so we can, in the same way, just go to those individual spaces and assign them capacity. Now notice that in this case, the square footage of those classrooms is about 1,000 square feet, so the capacity will be about 12. So now it is a process that takes some time. So we have to go through all the rooms and make sure. But in the end, what you're going to have is a classroom in this case that is available for us to occupancy with the new capacity, and that is ready for us to actually place individuals right there.